Welcome to the Family Resiliency presentation hosted by Kelly Wilkinson, Dementia Care Coach for the Dementia Society. If you have any questions, you can type it in the Q&A box or the chat box. The Q&A will be at the end of the presentation. I will now turn it over to Kelly.
Hello, and thank you so much for the introduction, Chelsea. And yes, my name is Kelly Wilkinson. I'm a dementia care coach with the Dementia Society, and I'm also a certified Canadian counselor. So I have worked with families and individuals in the past. So this webinar, this presentation, will be about an hour, and towards the end or throughout, I'll be answering some questions as they come through the chat. So I'm taking an educational approach to helping families learn about family resiliency, or help individuals learn about family resiliency, and to help mobilize or begin positive change within your own family and within your own resiliency. And what I'll do is I'll be going through the family resiliency model, and it's been reviewed and changed throughout the years. But for the majority of the material will be coming from Dr. Froma Walsh from the Chicago Center of Family Health. And she does a really good job at explaining family resiliency and structuring it so that it can be used in day-to-day life and in a practical means. So, what is resiliency exactly? And before I get to that, families come with different values, histories, and structures. And what we'll be focusing on is how we support one another in families when we face adversity. And right now, I think a lot of people are facing the COVID adversity, the challenge or the problem. There's reduction in stimulating activities, bonds, going out into the community, and even we're seeing a decrease in some cognitive, we're seeing a decrease in cognitive abilities and some changes in our loved ones. So this adversity, this challenge we're faced with is something that's very new. We've never really had practice in this before. Maybe some of our, the older generations have with past pandemics, but this is something really new. So we have to keep that in mind when we're thinking about our family resiliency, and that what type of adversity or problem are we up against, and is this something new for us? So that will take a different tone of how you'll approach the problem, and how much support and patience you'll give yourself too, because it's new. So so what is resiliency, right? I think a lot of times we think about an inner strength, or the natural capacity to meet challenges and overcome them. But in actuality, resiliency is very much developed through life events and challenges that you go through, because each time you go through it, you learn something different, which is then applied to the next situation. So resiliency is very much the capacity to rise above adversity, and through that, forge strength and growth, and also understand yourself differently after the challenge. So from that, what is then family resiliency? It definitely involves individual resiliency, because each member plays a part within the family as a whole. And family resiliency is very much the relational support we provide each other when we face adversity that affects us as a whole family. So like the COVID-19, or like a diagnosis of dementia. So if we move next to, and the buttons are always a little fickle with switching. There we go. So we're going to break down this family resiliency model, or this structure, into 3 core chapters or pieces. And then these will break down further into into three other concepts. So we'll learn about family belief systems, and then we'll learn what that breaks down as, and then some examples of how we can improve or connect with our family belief systems. So family resiliency is broken down into what we believe as a family, and how we make meaning, how we find hope, how we use faith. Family organizational patterns is, okay, what roles do members play? What tasks or responsibilities do certain roles take on? And then also communication and problem solving. So how do we connect to one another? How do we get through challenges? Are we proactive, or do we tend to go inside and rely on other members to kind of use their strengths to handle certain parts of a problem? So we'll go through each one. So I'm just making sure yes. And as we go through each of these chapters and each of the items, families will tend to pick and choose or create an equation from these items that work for them. And that recipe or that equation can change over time, or as roles change or events happen. This equation or this recipe of what works for you in meeting challenges as a family will change. So I'm going to click. That worked good. So first is family belief systems. So many families will make meaning out of the challenges, out of the adversity. Yes, there's a lot of negative things that may happen, a lot of negative feelings, a lot of things that might feel taken from you when we're facing adversity, when we're facing a problem or a challenge or even a diagnosis of dementia. We may feel like things are robbed, but actually we're acquiring skills or practices or beliefs from this experience and challenge that actually helps us grow and become a more well-rounded individual, or at least somebody that is a little bit more resilient because they understand the costs and the benefits of life events, of the challenges of life. So a good example is a woman that becomes pregnant in order to have a child. Pregnancy is not easy. Delivery is a lot of pain. You feel like a lot is taken from you, but in the end, you have a child, you've become a mom. So there's meaning out of the pain and out of the challenges. Number two is, positive outlook and having hope. This has to be balanced because we need to understand that positive outlook is important, but we also have to understand the challenges and what we're actually going through to also know how much hope or how much I don't think I'm saying this right, but it's to talk about the challenges while still trying to promote a positive outlook, that you're realistic about what's happening, but that you're positive in that, as a family, we're going to come together. We can do this. We can get through this. We'll become better from this. And it's not necessarily saying, oh, it'll be fine, and discounting feelings, discounting the challenges, and just kind of having this, toxic positivity to where you're not addressing, the reality of the situation. So that's kind of what I mean by having a balance with your positive outlook and you're having hope. And when we go into communication, we'll talk a little bit about that, because when we interact with family members, we have to make sure that's balanced. When somebody comes to you and says they're dealing with something, we don't want to go straight into, well, everything will be fine, have hope, have faith, it'll be okay. We first want to say, yeah, this is hard. Like, anybody in this situation, this will be tough for them. But I see what you're doing, and I can tell you from knowing you that I think it's going to be okay, because you're doing this, and this, and you're really trying to make sure you have hope and you have a positive outcome, or at least an outlook on this. So I know it's hard, but I can tell that you're really trying to make sure things come into place, or at least are manageable. And then spirituality, rituals, and ceremonies. So we can mean really big things like, if you're Catholic, if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, and, a spirituality and that connectedness with your family is a big part of your resiliency. But rituals can mean something very little, very small, more day to day. So a ritual that my family does is we'll call each other on our birthdays and we'll sing happy birthday a little bit. So that's a ritual, and that's something that brings us together. It's a bit of a ceremony, and it's something to look forward to keep your hopes high and give you a little bit of a boost during the day. And I know little boosts like that can be really important as we're going through the pandemic and the restrictions. Yeah, so now we're going to move to the next slide, and these are things that we can do to kind of highlight our family system's beliefs. So what you can do. And I know, families are not perfect, and these are only suggestions and ways we can kind of become more connected, more resilient, and support one another. But talking about challenges and successes with families is really important. We'll talk about openness, but that's a part of talking about challenges and successes with family, is sharing, how you're feeling while having curiosity and interest in how somebody else is feeling, and putting all of that information together and understanding that you're not alone, within the challenges and the successes, but also to celebrate the successes, whether big or small, and creating a little ritual around that. And because, we're mostly virtual nowadays, and maybe that's planning a video call, and, in the background you have banners and maybe a balloon or two, and you're just celebrating what your success is for that month or for that week, or anything that comes to mind that you would want to celebrate. So we kind of talked about joining together for virtual ceremonies, birthdays, anniversaries, things like that. Talking about what you hope to learn from others, I think, is really important, because that it shows, one, that you're curious, two, that you don't know it all, and you're kind of a student just like everybody else is in your family, but you also get to know one another and what your strengths and your weaknesses may be. Creating new traditions and rituals together, so that's very much happening right now because we can't meet in person, we can't have large gatherings. So some creativity needs to happen around what those rituals might look like now, from what they looked like before going virtual. And also, sharing in responsibilities for these ceremonies is important because it creates ownership for each member. And when we bring all of our the responsibility, or what we did together, and we see it all, it's kind of like a visual of what we are as a family. We're coming together, we're bringing our parts, and together we're creating this ceremony. And that's what we are. We're individuals, and we come together to become families. So another example of this too is praying, or having moments to yourself as well, where you're making individual meaning out of the challenges while still sharing in the family meaning of the challenges. All right, I apologize if you can hear a little bit of beeping or construction in the back. There's just a bit of road work happening outside of my house at the moment. So moving forward, we're going to be talking about family organizational patterns. So families, tend to have flexibility to adapt, especially if there's a diagnosis of dementia. That person who may be diagnosed might not be able to carry out some of the roles and responsibilities that they once have. So the family is then moving roles, changing, shifting to assume the responsibility of what the family member can't assume anymore. Also, connectedness and mutual support. So receiving and giving support to family members as they're going through their own challenges or as they're dealing with the family challenge as an individual. So an example of this is connectedness and mutual support. So I know we're kind of going into a second wave. So I had texted my sister because I felt a bit of a heavy feeling or sense after learning that there was a bit of a second wave coming, and knowing I had these feelings, I had the thought of, okay, if I have these feelings, I know my sister might also have these feelings, and she's also shared, opened up a little bit about how she's experiencing the COVID. So I took a moment to just text her. It's something easy to do, it takes a few minutes, and I just said, I hope your week is going well. Just wanted to pass on the I'm here for you. Um, Stay strong message, since we are going into a second wave. Deep breaths, we can do this. So that creates connectedness, increased bond, mutual support, and also for myself, having the reply back of, yes, I'm feeling this way, and if you are, please don't hesitate to contact me, lifts me up and makes me feel like I'm not doing this alone, or I'm not in this alone. And actually, the feelings I have that I may be ruminating about throughout the day is something somebody else close to me is also feeling. And this is a good person, or this is a good path to take to share in the experiences and receive mutual support and love. So also kin, social, and economic resources. So that means we're, sharing, and caregivers are, this is big for caregivers because they're sharing in their own resources of time, money, letting go of some of their desires in their career because they have to be providing support. So um, within resilient families, they'll share these social economic resources with one another. So they'll understand that they may have more of something than another family member. And if that family member is in need, they'll share what they have with that other person. So what we see in family organizational patterns is a flexibility. So flexibility to adapt and to change with what's happening with the challenge or the environment. Connectedness, providing mutual support, being aware that somebody needs support and then being there for them, and then helping and sharing in kin, social, and economic resources. So what can you do? So when we're talking about family organizational patterns, flexibility, connectedness, and resources, what can we do? So we kind of talked a little bit about this in our family, in our family belief systems, but talking about your strengths and weaknesses openly are important, because then we can understand how difficult or how easy it is for you to adapt or to be flexible and take on more. Well, if I know I'm better at coordinating finances and my sister is better at the day-to-day, management of care, then let's talk about that and let's use that to our strengths, to the strength of the family, and take on tasks that really resonate with our own strengths. So when we're talking about kin and social and economic resources, we want to contribute where we can, so that the entire family system is supported by shared resources from the family members. So for instance, an example of this is if one of your family members is unable to work and the program CERC is over, you might, offer for them to move into your home, or you might, connect them with somebody that's looking for a roommate. So that's just contributing where you can and offering that kind of mutual support through resources. Being flexible. It's not always easy, especially especially when you're going through a lot and your plate is full. It can be difficult to, throw out the agenda and do something different. But we have to understand as a family system what the needs are in relation to what the challenge is, what the adversity is. And if that requires you to take on a role you may not have been experienced in, but you'll gain strength from, it might be good for you to become flexible in that way. Checking in with yourself and family members. So the example I shared with just checking in with my sister and sharing my own feelings and just giving her a bit of a boost is important. And do what you can, if writing letters or emails or calling or texting is, whatever is easiest between you and your family, that's what you should do, instead of making things more difficult. Just try to tailor all of these things to fit what your family can and has capacity to do. And you can totally say this out of the blue. I'm just checking in with you because you came into my mind and I wanted to see how you're doing. So that shows that you're interested, you're curious, you're thinking of them, and that there's love and support there. And most of the time you'll get something in return as well, like the mutual support that comes back to you because you have offered it. So a really important piece is, we can talk about family resiliency and a unit and a system, but we're all individuals within this system. So if you yourself, could benefit from, oh, sorry, that's in my that's in my individual counseling. So there are community supports for family mediation and counseling if you're feeling like you need some guidance or some navigation around some of these talks. Like for instance, if you've always had, family historical difficulty with flexibility, that might be a goal you'd want to do with a counselor in family mediation. Our family has some difficulty with flexibility and knowing, our parent now has dementia, we're going to have to take on some things. We just want to get some tools around this, or have a conversation, a constructive, beneficial conversation around how we can improve our flexibility within the family. And that brings me to my next point. And sometimes that means individual counseling for some members or for extra tools. I myself, I'm really passionate about family systems theory, but also family resiliency. But I also understand that I'm a nervous person, so I may react a little bit more emotionally in my personal life than logically or realistically. It takes me a little bit of time to get to that logical, realistic layer of the situation. So I myself went into individual counseling so I can just slow myself down a little bit, and that I don't react in an emotional way immediately, but I take time to think, process, and then contribute, what I think would be helpful. And that work that I did on my own helped the family system and the flexibility, because instead of we become distracted by my reaction, as opposed to focusing on being proactive and remedy or navigating the adversity. So sharing a meal together, this may look, it might be on Zoom or it might be by phone, but this can also be a ritual where you do this every week, once a week or once a month, and just discussing what you're grateful for, I think is important, because then we can highlight all of the contributions and the mutual support that's been happening with the family, and just kind of speaking it out loud and having love for that, and appreciating the growth and the synergy of the family. So now I'm just going through my brain space and making sure I've hit on everything I would like to. All right, so communication and problem solving. I think this chapter of family resiliency out of the three is the most I tend to work on with families and with individuals. Because like I said, you know, a lot of individuals can react emotionally instead of realistically or logically, or, you know, be proactive towards the situation. So we have to understand, you know, who am I as an individual? How do I communicate? What's my personal resiliency like? And how may that affect the family system or the family's resiliency? So being clear to yourself and self-awareness is really important, because it contributes to how you problem solve and how you communicate with yourself and with the family members in your system. So being very clear and taking time to think about what you'd like to say. You know, journaling is a really great tool for clarifying what our thoughts might be for particular situations, or, you know, what our family environment might be like. Journaling and reading out loud what you say can help organize some of those thoughts, so that when you send them out to that individual, that they can receive it or digest it in an easier way, you know? So it's just about making sure that the mutual language is clear, and that information is being easily passed from one another. So choosing your words wisely, you know, I think there's a famous phrase, although I'll get it wrong, your words steer the ship, you know? So they kind of steer behavior, steer, you know, reaction. So we want to make sure we're processing how we're feeling, we're taking time for ourselves to digest, and then we're organizing our thoughts in a way that's more easily digestible for the audience. Open emotional expression. So I'll go back to my example of myself and my own family of open emotional expression. So when I would react emotionally when an adverse, challenging situation would happen, I was, you know, being emotionally expressing myself in an open way. That's True, but it derailed what we were coming together for, and that work was more individual than it was family based, if that makes sense. So when we say open emotional expression, it means talking to your family or to a member of your family in a way that balances, you know, your own perception, your own experiences, how you're feeling with what's happening, but balanced with what the rest of the family may be feeling, and making sure we're balancing our needs versus their needs, if that makes sense at all. So if I go back to myself, it's perfectly okay to have an emotional response to a new challenge or an adversity. But we just have to synthesize it in a way that it's useful for the family. So when I would go into, oh my God, and I'd start crying, and all of a sudden then the onus and the focus would be on me, I could have said, well, this is very upsetting. You know, and I think I need some time to let this settle in before we can really talk about it in depth. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to maybe come back tomorrow for lunch and talk about it in more detail. You know, what do you think? So that's, you know, openly expressing your emotions with balancing out the needs of somebody else. So you're also letting know, this is where I am. Is it okay if we do this? So you're incorporating their experiencing in with your own open emotional expression. Collaborative problem solving and proaction. So collaborative problem solving. So it's really using the strengths and weaknesses of the members within your system to solve problems, and being proactive on what needs to be changed and what can't be changed. That's understanding, you know, what I can control and what I can't control, and then who would be best to take on this, and are they willing, or do they have capacity, you know, or do I have those skills, or can I acquire those skills to complete or help this problem. Collaborative problem solving may also mean you know, having a little working group that will fix, we can't find the wills. We need to find the wills. Okay, Janice, Mark, and Louise, why don't you look at all the different residences and see if we can find it physically. I'll go and connect with the bank and see if it's in the lockbox. And then we'll come back together and see what we have, determine next steps. So we're focused on fixing the problem. We're using the strengths of our family members, and we're using a clarity of communication to get through it. So what can you do? What can you, I apologize. So receive emotional sharing with openness, curiosity, and warmth. So within one challenge, a family has many different parts, and everybody's going to experience it similarly and differently at the same time, because we're all unique individuals. So we talked about openness of emotional sharing, but also curiosity and warmth in asking about how somebody else is doing within your family. Having curiosity. So when we're listening to how somebody is doing, we're not preparing our answer. We're not, running off in our thoughts. We're focused on what the person's words are and how they're emoting those words, right? And then we're building a perception of what they're going through. So we have to have curiosity, and we also have to have warmth as they're sharing, because it can be very difficult and very feeling a sense of vulnerability to share in how you might be feeling. And also different generations may have difficulty with opening up and sharing. So for a millennial, we may see when they share, it may be a few paragraphs. For somebody that's a little bit older, it may be a couple of words, or vice versa. That can be completely different too. The millennial could say a couple of words, and vice. All to say is that everybody is very different, and we need to give them space and time to open up, and sometimes using silence can be really helpful in that, because it helps the person organize their thoughts, digest, and then come out with a statement or a phrase that resonates with them and connects with how they're feeling. So make sure you communicate your own needs with clarity and warmth, right? When stressors are high, patience is low, we need to take a few deep breaths, take some time to ground ourselves with our mind and body. Okay, where's my body right now? It's in the kitchen. Where's my mind? Okay, my mind is 2 weeks ago. Okay, bring it back to where I am right now, in the kitchen. How am I feeling right now? Okay, I'm overwhelmed. Okay. A few more deep breaths. So it's important to take, a few seconds, it takes a few minutes throughout your day just to help realign yourself to where you communicate in a way that's clear and useful and constructive. And it's okay if you start communicating in a way that's, your tone is aggressive or impatient. It's okay to say, whoa, I'm really sorry about how I started there. I think I need a little bit of time to myself to figure this out, and then I'm going to come back to you if that's okay. It's okay to do that. Take time for yourself when needed. So this can be that little minute in the kitchen where you're, taking time to ground. Or taking time for yourself may mean a walk, may mean, going out with a friend, talking about what's happening in your family and getting some mutual support there. It may mean individual counseling where, somebody is sitting across from you that has no understanding or doesn't understand the history or dynamics of your family and can just offer a very pure kind of support. And I've lost the word, support and validation and normalization of what's happening. So learn about your style of communication. This is important because, like, I had a friend in university who she yelled at the, her voice was just on a higher level than everybody else, but culturally that's how they communicated. So at first I was kind of really pulled pretty stunned, you know, talking to this person because I felt I did something wrong, but she just explained, no, I know it sounds like I'm yelling at you, but I'm not mad. This is just how we talk. So once we had that conversation, it kind of was, okay, put in the pocket, and I get, you know, um, so, you know, talking about your perceptions with your family is important. You know, if you're feeling like the tone is a little bit tough, you know, oh, did I say something that might have offended you? Like, even though my intent was not that, the consequence was you were, you know, um, insulted, or you were upset. It made you upset. So I'm apologizing for the consequence, you know, even though the intent was not that. Actively problem solve together and focus on proaction. So we talked a little bit about that in our collaborative problem solving and proaction. So think back, you know, you know, if you went to school, if you've done a project, or if you joined a club or an association, think about how you would organize and problem solve different challenges that came up. You know, you would define roles, you would define tasks, you would set timelines. So it's similar, you know, especially when we're navigating dementia. There can be a lot of different appointments, a lot of financial matters, home maintenance, you know, a lot of things that kind of happen. So having an organized approach to problem solving and being proactive in what you can and cannot change is really beneficial and useful in addressing adversity and challenges. Excellent. So that was a brief overview of the family resiliency model and what families do to increase their bonds, their family strengths, and their resiliency together. So many families will pick and choose things and try new things to make an equation or recipe for themselves that builds their resiliency or strengthens their resiliency. And like I said, resiliency can be built, individual or family can be built any time within the lifespan. So, you know, life is very much a set of challenges and solutions. So that's one thing we can rely on, is challenges and change in life. So I'm just going to make sure I've said all my little pieces to make sure you've gotten everything you can. I'm thinking we will have a more detailed focus in some of these chapters in the future using webinar. And so right now I'm going to go next into the community services and resources that are available for family resiliency and mediation. So within the community, we have Family Services Ottawa, and they, just like Eastern Ottawa Resource Center, they have a lot of family-focused programming, educational series, support groups, one-on-one support. So Council on Aging, there's a lot of wonderful virtual events that they list in their newsletter, and that can be really great for families that want to create rituals or ceremonies, or do something together that creates connectedness or increased bonds. An example is there's a lot of virtual museum tours at the moment, so you can always have a lovely Sunday evening where everybody checks in and has a tour together. And then you can talk about it as a family, of asking questions and being curious about how they experienced it. And then there's also the Royal Ottawa Family Groups. So they have support groups and help family caregivers that are in more complex situations with the diagnosis and mental health. And then also we have a video, the challenges of COVID-19 and persons living with dementia. And I believe that's presented by Frank Molnar. He's a geriatrician. So it just goes over all of the different types of adversity or challenges that are present for people living with dementia and with what's been going on, COVID. So just below, we also have a YouTube channel, and I've linked it there, but you can also just go onto YouTube, enter in our name, Dementia Society of Ottawa in Renfrew County. And then you'll actually see a full playlist of all our videos, all our webinars, and even our recreational programs online that you can also view with your family members, either virtually or in person if they're a part of your bubble. And also, you know, we're here to help. We have an intake line that runs throughout the day. So if there's a particular challenge or a piece from this webinar, you know, that you'd like to expand upon or talk with somebody, please, you know, give us a call. We're really there to help you organize your thoughts, brainstorm on ideas, and just be there as a, again, mutual support. With that said, that's not my dog. I found this really adorable dog online, and I thought it would be a nice way to end the presentation. So we're going to go on to questions here. And I see we have one. Oh, great. That's wonderful. Because, you know, I always wonder. I would like to show you a couple of books that I think are helpful. Hi. So these are some books that you can read on your own as an individual that will help improve your family resiliency. So one is Becoming a Helper. So, you know, I'll list these so everybody has them. But Becoming a Helper would be useful because it helps you understand how to give and receive mutual support. It doesn't relate necessarily to caregiving, but it has to do more with attending and helping friends and family. So there's also the resilience factor. So this is a good one if you're wanting to build on individual resiliency within yourself that will also benefit your family resiliency. This one has been godsend right now, and that's Whatever Arises, love that. So that's by Matt Kahn, and it just talks about, you know, things in life will come up that are maybe unexpected, maybe create some again, that word, I'll let it go. But whatever happens in life, it kind of helps you to pull out the benefits, the value of that, and to manage the challenges and the adversity. And then finally, so it's very old, but Eckhart Tolle, listening to him can be difficult, but reading him is very lovely, in my opinion. The Power of Now. So that's mindfulness, being in the moment, dealing with what's happening now, and not living in the past, or, you know, you're now being mostly future and thinking about what's going to happen. So those are a few books that you can go through, and I'll make sure that you have that list as well. Oh, so we have a question. Is there an online link for some different puzzles, tests to print out? Thanks. That's a great question. What I tend to do is I go to Pinterest, Pinterest. That is a website that is kind of like a community where people can upload different materials, and you can search them, and they're free. So what you can do is go on Pinterest and search puzzles, senior activities, and it'll give you free PDFs that you can print out and use. So I hope that answers your question. And would you like to? Oh, I was going to write that. Oh, type answer. Okay, Pinterest to search for activities and puzzles. Great. And I do know that, you know, this webinar might have just exploded a lot of thoughts in your mind right now. So take some time today to just digest everything and see what you can pull out of the presentation that you can use within your family system, whether that be starting a new little ritual, or maybe just sharing, you know, connecting with somebody that might need some mutual support. So I'm wondering if anybody else has any other questions that they would like to share via the chat. Okay, so I don't think there's any. Oh, how do you know when it is time to intervene? So what do you mean by intervene? Like call a family meeting and to talk about something that might be under the rug, implicit and not talked about? I'm thinking that's what you might mean. So um hmm. So oh, need to dash. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for participating. So when is a good time to intervene? Oh, okay. So with the sibling who seems not to be managing well. I think it's important to find somebody within the family system that has the strongest or the closest relationship with that person. And what I mean by that is that they have a shared language, that there's a mutual understanding. Because that would be the person I would choose to kind of talk to this sibling and to open up a conversation or space to talk about how they might be dealing with this or feeling. You know, at the same time, they may not accept that invitation to talk about things. And, you know, when you give out the invitation, you have to also expect that they may decline it. So, and in that case, it's about having the perception that they may not be ready, you know, to talk about things, or they may not have had that time to digest enough. And that's when we can say, you know, okay, I understand it might not be a good time. I want you to know I'm here for you. If you want to call or text, I'll be here to talk, okay? Because I love you and I'm here, and yeah, I got you. I'm here for you. You know, even if I have to repeat that a couple of times. So example is refrigerator not working for 6 weeks, uses ice packs atop crisper drawers to keep food. So if this is somebody who has dementia, who's having difficulty using the fridge, then that would be more of a technical working around, you know, trying to do something that will fix the fridge or get a smaller fridge because they're feeling like the fridge is too overwhelming to kind of keep things going. If a sibling is, you know, having a difficult time and a lot of the things in their environment are starting to break down, or then that's something, you know, you can use. You know, I noticed that your fridge hasn't been working in 6 weeks, or I've noticed your fridge hasn't been working. You know, can I look into it and fix it for you? Or, you know, can we get a smaller fridge? You know, help that person brainstorm if you're focusing on one particular problem. If you want them to talk about what's been going on for themselves and their experience, that might just, you know, you might need to give them a little bit of space and time. So I hope that helps answer the question, you know, and with a sibling who seems not to be managing well. And sometimes, you know, if there's a sibling that's not managing well with the whole diagnosis, sometimes it takes a couple of close family members to kind of take them out, not with creating an us and them, you know, you're on this side, and we're concerned about you, but just that, you know, we want to make sure that everybody feels safe, that they are happy, and that's why we're coming together to talk about how everybody's doing, because this COVID thing or this dementia thing is new for us. So we want to make sure that we're checking in with everybody and everybody's okay. And if they're not okay, that it's okay to say that they're not okay, you know. I hope that answers your question. If not, my email is available on the website. So if you'd like to send a personal question, and that's mighty fine as well. All right, so I'll just give a couple more minutes in case there's another question that comes up. And you know, if you don't have that, if you don't have that mutual support at the moment, just give us a call because we can be that for you. It's really important right now. Stay connected, family or not, you know. Ooh. Oh, how do you get a sibling to understand they have dementia? Okay, that's a great question. So I always think about, you know, what is the cost of providing that information? You know, what's the benefit and what's the cost? If me talking to my sibling about their dementia diagnosis will cause a distressing reaction, then the cost is really outweighing the benefit. If I'm hoping that by telling her she'll have insight into her dementia and challenges, then that, the value add may be more for you, and it's more hope than valuable for your sibling or your loved one. So we always have to think about value add. When we want to talk about a diagnosis with somebody who has dementia, we have to think about what the reaction might be and what the benefit and the cost would be. With dementia, there's psychological denial, and then there's lack of insight. A lack of insight is that they just don't have the capacity to understand that there's challenges and how to meet those challenges with resources and support. And then psychological denial is, I can't emotionally accept right now that I have dementia, even though I know there's challenges and I need support. So sometimes you can see two, sometimes just insight, sometimes it's denial. So I hope that helped answer your question. Also, so if you're feeling like, okay, if I share their diagnosis and talk to them about it, it's going to cause distress, I'm gonna leave it alone. But if they come to you and they say, I think my memory is getting worse, do you think that there's something that might be wrong? That's, they're opening up the opportunity to talk about that. And I always suggest asking open-ended questions back, because that gives them more freedom to answer and communicate, rather than giving yes, no kind of answers. So you can say, have you noticed that your memory hasn't been working? Oh, I guess that is a yes or no. But tell me about some of the things you've been noticing about yourself, and then just have them discuss it. If they bring up dementia, well, I think it might be dementia, and say, is that something you would want to know? So let them lead the conversation a little bit while still supporting them in their communication. Okay, I hope that helps. So if a parent with dementia is asking me to do things for her when I think she could be doing some of these things herself, should I simply do it or try to get her to do it herself? Great question. Well, we first have to observe what their capability is on a day-to-day basis, to know if they can truly do something on their own, or if they cannot. We also have to keep in mind that COVID and the restrictions have caused some decline in some people. So you will notice within the last 7 months that there has been change in what they can and cannot do. So we have to be sure that we're observant without being intrusive, and understanding what their capacity is. Now, if you feel like in a task such as doing the dishes, where there's many tasks within that one task, so understanding where the dirty dishes are, getting the soap prepared with the water, getting your dish rag, cleaning the soap, washing it, getting the food off, rinsing it, putting it in the dry wok, drying it, and then putting exactly where it should be. So there's lots of steps within that one step. So we might just want to help her do parts of the task where she needs support, and let her be independent with the parts that she can do. So it's kind of not going, one way or the other, but it's kind of meeting in the middle with what she can and cannot do, So like when you're baking with somebody, you're letting them toss in the flour or the sugar, but you'll be doing the mixing or the stirring, or using the heat. So you can definitely support them in completing the task and make it more of a, yes, I know, I was saying that, but it's actually a really nice activity to do with your parents too. Like as an adult child, I like to bake. But yeah, definitely. So it's understanding what they can and cannot do in this moment, because it can change, and then helping them with what they can't do, and letting them be independent with what they can. Okie dokie. So I'm wondering if anybody else has any other questions? Now, my email, although it's found online, it's KW, so K Wilkinson, WILKINSON at DSORC, DSORC.org. If you have any questions. Yeah, I realize that what you've said about decline during COVID is really valid. Yeah, it's something our team is hearing a lot about. Yeah. All right, so we're about 1 o'clock now. So I think we'll end our question period. Really appreciate everybody joining me today and listening. I hope that you've at least been able to take 1 or 2 useful nuggets or pieces of information that will help your family or yourself. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want to talk a little bit more.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. From now until Thanksgiving, we are inviting you to get Brainy Active. Do a fun and challenging activity every day to build brain resilience while raising funds for the Dementia Society. Read a book, dance a jig, walk a block, activate your brain. Register at www.brainyactivechallenge.ca and show us your #BrainyActiveChallenge. For more information on education programs and support, visit our website, dementiahelp.ca, or register to our weekly roundup. Have a nice day, everyone.